Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would sit down and chat with you guys and gals about something, but let me get a sip of my water first. Get my beautiful radio voice going, and let's talk about this. Alright, this is a topic that I still see come up, and to me it's ludicrous in 2024 that this is even a conversation. This was debunked well over a decade ago. Most of the top experts will tell you protein timing and particularly this limit to how much you can get from one meal and actually utilize for anything is completely ridiculous. It was largely perpetrated by supplement industry. Originally, they were trying to sell more protein shakes. And I don't think protein shakes are a bad thing. I think if people are trying to protein overfeed, protein shakes are extremely viable. Okay? They're a completely viable approach for this. For people who are trying to take their protein intake up really high for certain like fat loss things and satiety and stuff, it makes sense. They're actually valuable there. And I think 99% of supplements are completely useless, right? So I want to be clear there. But supplements are just food. But that's never stopped the industry from making up whatever nonsense they want about this frog algae, this frog algae freeze-dried dog turds inhibits myostatin, because that's like the magical key to muscle growth. With no real evidence to support it. They used to say this sort of stuff all the time without even looking into the fact that humans born with myostatin deficiencies actually have all sorts of enormous problems. Okay, they don't become amazing bodybuilders. Let's put it that way. You don't see those people winning bodybuilding shows. You don't see them being professional athletes. They don't have a good life. But I digress back over to the point. Well, unless having crippling muscle cramps and spasms every single day of your life, particularly if you try to do any sort of exercise, is your idea of a good life, but it doesn't make for particularly good bodybuilders or, football players. So this is the sort of stuff they've done in the past. But when we look at it, I want people to stop and think about this for just a minute before we even look at any of the science. Some common sense. We know the human body is extremely efficient at utilizing protein. We also know that the human body turns over at least 300 grams of its own protein every single day that gets broken down in your body and reutilized as part of your amino acid pool. Okay? And we need to be clear, this is pretty well documented. So anyone telling you that this amino acid pool isn't extremely large already is full of it. So whatever we're adding to it is then supplemental, okay? But your entire muscle protein synthesis is not dependent upon the current availability of immediately consumed protein. Okay, there's a lot of other things happening. Yes, that can add to the net effect of the pool, but that pool is pretty big. And even your exercise itself is part of the breakdown of that pool. But the other thing to think about, you really think prehistoric man had to get protein every couple hours? They had to have all these feeds, or there was a limit? If there was a limit on what your ancestors could consume and get benefits from, they would have all had severe muscle wasting and would have died, and we wouldn't be here. Because when they got large amounts of animal protein, it wasn't every day. Okay, and again, go back prehistoric. We're not talking about when people learned to cure meats or make jerkies or any of this stuff in later times. If you're talking way, way, way back, before we had a salt trade and all these various things that, again, used to cure meat and preserve it, they couldn't keep it more than a day, particularly in warmer climates, which is where most of humanity existed through all of history, right? Through most of history. Most of human history, Homo sapien has existed in environments that were hot. In other words, you couldn't eat the meat the next day from the game, okay? It was already bad, you'd get sick. They had to consume large amounts of meat in one go from, say, a big kill the tribe made, and they would gorge on it. They might get a couple 100 grams at one time. Depends on how big of a kill they got and how far it went through the tribe. Could have been hundreds of grams in one meal. And then they might not get any real animal protein, for a few days, potentially in some cases. Yet they survived. They survived and were able to utilize this protein. Like, this is just part of basic human history and some common sense to look at these things. And when you look at the real stuff in the lab, what do we see? What's that recent study we saw just a couple months ago? Made a big deal where they tested something like 30 grams versus 100 grams of protein in one meal. What did they find? The larger protein didn't necessarily increase muscle protein synthesis spike. It didn't spike it. It prolonged it. So when you eat the 30 grams here in this meal, it comes up to here and then it tapers back off. When you eat 100 grams, it comes up to here and sustains longer and then tapers back off. So in other words, eating very large, and this was muscle protein synthesis. We're not just talking about a digestion, absorption, other metabolic effects. We're talking about the muscle protein synthesis in. This is what we are concerned with if we're talking about gains, not overall health and metabolism. Just the muscle growth side. Okay, which is the only reason a lot of times we're consuming large amounts of protein. But what did they find? That a larger amount, we had no trouble. 100 grams, we utilize it. We absorb it very efficiently. It goes into, it gets our amino acid pool higher, right? Circulating in our body, and it prolonged it. Instead of, hey, we taper and then so if we add more, we still just get that taper and it dropped off. That's not what happens. So again, this idea that we also needed these frequent feedings, and that's with this 30 gram cap, that's where it was, well, we need at least 6 meals a day, 8 meals a day. People would do that because 6 meals, we could get 180 grams of protein and maximize it. No, because we found that even 100 grams in one meal gives you the same benefit as eating the 30 over several meals. It just keeps the level elevated. Whereas if you eat it, the 30 over and over, it's like here, and you're respiking it before it drops down. Okay. But if you just eat it all at once, it's just flat. The effect is pretty much the same. So in other words, this is nonsense. It's not something any reasonable evidence-based person believes and has not for many years. And yet we still see it come up all the time. I see it asked in groups. I see it in forums. I see it in all these places. Hey, I heard we can only absorb 30 grams of protein in one meal. So what do I do? Like, I still see people asking these questions. Okay. But it's nonsense. And it's been debunked a long time. And even that most recent study, if anyone still believed it, that study just kind of shows, hey, look, this is nonsense. It's always been nonsense. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.